everyone, Ansugren here. On this video I'm going to talk a little bit about uh, an, a project that I have decided to join in on. The project is called School of the West. It is basically a schooling system meant for the well-being of European children across the globe. But I would argue that it can actually also serve, basically everyone of every age that still wants to learn about something. I have talked with the people of School of the West, and while there may yet be changes to come in the future, I have a specific view at this point in time on how I'm going to present the what you might call the study material, the schooling material, whichever you prefer. I may also provide translations in other languages in the future as well, but for now it's going to be in English. So what is it that I'm going to provide for the School of the West? Throughout my entire life I have always had a very keen interest in history, and it actually is not really beholden to a certain people or a certain time. Actually, history across the globe appeals to me very much. But for the School of the West, I'm going to add what I would argue is something I hold very close to heart. And it's actually, by coincidence more so than anything else, a period in European history that appeals to many of our folk. And I think that's actually a very good reason to jump in. And which may that be? Some may already guess it, but I'm going to just lay it out. It's the Viking period. The period that I have in mind goes from about the 6th, 7th century, or maybe even the 8th, all the way to what you might call the 11th, 12th century. The process I'm going to go through this is from I'm going to try to keep it chronological as best as I may, because I'm going to, by merit of how history is, I'm going to have to jump around a lot. Sometimes it may happen that I'm going to slide into the 9th or 10th century, but then in a few episodes I suddenly have to make a leap back to the 8th century or what have you. This can be because I may bump into another historical figure that I hadn't seen before, which happened to be from an older age. It may be because there is a story that I'm trying to explain to people as best as I may, or map out the history, so to say, which also may force me to go back. But overall, there should be a certain progression in time. This is going to be a long project, I can tell that as much. On the few hours that I spent just looking for characters, I have already found 32 at this point in time Viking or Scandinavian figures, you might say. And there is many more. The series will also include historical figures from other peoples, the people that the Vikings got in contact with. Who may that be? Well, basically the Proto-Irish, the Proto-Welsh, the Saxons are going to be in there. There's going to be the Iberians, so basically the Goths. There's going to be the different caliphates of the Muslims that invaded into Europe. It's also going to include the varying Slavic factions in Eastern Europe. The Byzantine Empire is going to be involved, etc., etc. It's quite a task that I put on my shoulders, but frankly I love the history, so for me it's not really work. It's while it will take up a lot of my time and energy, I will enjoy doing it, and I think that's very important. If you want to teach someone something, it has to, you have to love to do it yourself. Otherwise, the quality will plummet if you do it only because you have to. Now, I do feel that sense of responsibility towards our young and actually also our old. But yeah, there is that to it. I enjoy doing it. Now, is there something else that I need to add to this? Yes. So what is it going to be about? I personally believe that it is very important that we have as close of a view on what happened in the history as as we can perceive today. Nobody can exactly say how it happened and what they thought, why they thought it, whatever it's going to be. But we can use our head still, right? These people are still the same people that we are today, just different technology and maybe somewhat of a different attitude. But that's a generational thing. You can't get away from that. So this this will mean that I will not shun topics that many of our people are will not be fond of hearing, because I will address betrayal. I will address horrible acts committed in the name of this religion or that ideology or that kingship. I will, I will keep it as objective as I can, meaning that I will leave room for everyone. Also, the people who are supposed to study this material to make up their own minds. That may sound a bit weird, but I'll get back on that in a bit. Actually, right. So what is it? What other elements in our history will I add? So yeah, I will not spare any horror, because I think that's actually gruesome as some of it may have been. I think that makes it even more important that the next generation basically understands what happened, at least to a certain extent, and hopefully will not make the same mistakes as what happened in the past. Let us try to make sure that the repetition of history, that it only will involve the things that are positive, why it's positive even. What other things will there be? I will address the different adventures that happened. I will address the different forms of art. I will address the different forms of even just clothing, fashion of the time, technological advancements such as their ships, which I want to get into a bit. I will maybe even, if I can, lay out what kind of animals were still alive back then that aren't around anymore. Species that have essentially died off, because that of course will also have an influence on their society. What kind of goats did they have? What kind of dogs? What kind of, all these things. Maybe even some kind of plants that aren't even around anymore that they used to dye with. Dye their clothing, or, used for paint. Maybe something about different kind of woods that they used. Such kind of things. And yeah, in regards to the topic, it will be fully packed. That's for certain. Now, as far as the teaching itself goes, it is via the internet, so of course I cannot hover over anyone's shoulder, and I really don't have an intention to do as much. We've all grown up with, or most of us at least, have grown up with this attitude that teaching is all about filling your head with information and being able to repeat that information. See, and I would argue that is not teaching. That's just cramming information in people's heads that they, let's all be honest here. How much do you still remember of your schooling days? 10 years ago, 20 years ago? I would argue that for the vast majority of us, we do not even remember that much of it, and what we remember were very specific things, usually attached to just a fond memory, and not so much the schooling material itself. And then there is a thing to be said about all the useless things that were so to say taught to us. All the useless stuff that we never had to use in our lives, but still were subject to, 5 days a week, for who knows how many hours a week, just so some guy at the front of your class can get paid. So what is it instead that I want? I want our children, and I want, even the old, to learn to think for themselves. And that's how most of my questions are going to be related as. I'm going to indeed leave questions for parents to ask their children. But it's not going to be clear-cut answers, not all the time. Maybe for the younger generations, my material at this point is, in my opinion, with the sensitivities of the local area where I live, 11 plus. I know those sensitivities may change, so I do recommend parents to first check my material before they expose their children to it, because as I said, there is some heavy material in there. I know where I live, 11 plus, that would be an acceptable age. It may not be so for several other countries or whatever it's going to be. That is up to you to decide if you expose your children to it or not. So, what else is there to it in regards to what I want to teach or how I'm going to go about it? So yeah, there will be, they will have to remember what has been provided to them. However, not in the real literal sense as is expected in public schooling today. What would be a good example? Let's say I make a video and it's about Ragnar Lodbrok. And yes, he is on the list. About Ragnar Lodbrok. And I ask, and then I may leave a question, and the question will not be like, oh, what kind of pants did he wear? Did I mention yellow or didn't I mention green pants? No. It's going to be about, I may ask, for example, if you want to be precise, it could be, well, what year did he what year did he start his voyage? Without specifically giving that year. But then in the material, you will find out on which year he landed in England or what have you. And then it's up for the student to think for a second and say, okay, so I'm just going to throw a number out there, a year. Let's say he landed at 793. So what would have been the year that he would have set off? Is it the same year? Was it the year before? Was it 2 years before? And here is where I believe the important part of schooling comes in. Not only now are they busy with the material and really thinking about it, the logistics of it, the distance of the sailing, whatever it's going to be, which which I think is how teaching should be happening. And the answer, of course, can be, oh well, it was the same year, it was the year before, what have you. And whether the answer then is correct or wrong, it almost stays in the middle, to me at least. What is important to me is that they thought about it, that they worked with it, that they, maybe even applied a few, taught themselves a few things. How long would it take with a long ship to go from Denmark to England? Does it take a month? Does it take 2 weeks? Now you have to look into that. So, not only then are they learning to think and work with the material, they're also encouraged to look around. And I won't, I'm going to add real quickly, I won't torture people with this, that they, for every question they have to go through 30 minutes or what have you of research. But at the very least, make it a guessing game in some regards. Just so they get the sense of what's sensible here. So they learn they get the skill of common sense, dealing with nature, that sort of thing. I understand it's a bit, maybe it is a bit vague, but I think everyone still understands what I'm getting at here. It's not just read and repeat, it is read, think, work with the material, and give an answer that lies as close as what might have been actually the case. And who knows, really excited people who really love the material, they may actually give the exact date as they found in a source somewhere, or they came up with what would have been actually sensible and close to actual dates that are out there. And that's, for me, that is good enough. or good enough. That's actually what it is. That what it should be about. And if they keep something from our past with them, and they bring it with them, and eventually they teach it to the next generation, then I believe we've done our work for the School of the West project. It will also, of course, include many different cultures and religions bumping into each other, and I'm not going to say who is right or who is wrong, who is the hero and who isn't and what have you. I'm just going to provide the material. I'm going to lay it out as best as I can on how it all happened. I'm going to offer tidbits in the material for people to look into, and this also offers a lot of philosophical questions and moral questions. Yeah, who is in the right here? Or, according to me, who is in the right here? Personal morality being developed, personal, and personal development is a very big deal in how I intend to offer everything. Now, do I want to keep it dry and just say, oh yeah, that year they did that, and that year that followed afterwards they could pay for that, and then that happened, and then that guy showed up, and then that guy died? No. I want to provide it in a somewhat entertaining fashion. Bear with me, first episodes, it's going to be a bit rough. I'm still trying to figure most of this out myself, how I'm going to go about it. However, I will try to keep it entertaining. I've also already asked a musician to, for if I am allowed to use this music, with which he agreed. So that's brilliant. So there's gonna be a bit of music underneath. And what else is there? Yeah, I believe. I'm going to bring it in somewhat of a story fashion, without tinkering on the characters themselves. I'm actually going to let the quotes that we have from them, that I found from them, sort of decide what kind of people they were. And that is something also I believe that's important. That is in respect to the people who lived in the past, and I believe that's also respectful to the people who go through the material, so so that they can make up their own minds of these people. Again, question who is moral, who isn't, who lives in line with our biospirit and who does not. Those kind of things. Now, is there yet something else? I know it's been already quite a bit. I had not expected that it would take this long to it. Oh yeah, what is also going to be part of the history lessons is it's not always going to just be about what happened in the past. There are some, what might you call them? There have been events that happened more than 1500 years ago that still play with us today in our society, believe it or not. And whether I do it in the immediate video with a central character, which every successive video will be largely about one or two central characters, it may involve that I bring material that plays in on what still happens today, or I make bonus videos, which will be a whole lot shorter, and they may actually have a bit more, what you might say, heavy material, the little bonus videos. Now don't worry, the more heavy material, that is the intention with that is for the people who really want to push a little bit more knowledge in there, who want to have a bit of a weave that goes back in time up until today, which may be, for some it may actually be very useful, and if it's not useful for you, then I leave it up to your parents to decide if you should study it or not. the material in all of this will be pretty much complementary to what most people get in public schooling. I would argue, doesn't really matter where, given that the standard of public schooling is, in my opinion, sinking something fierce, sinking deeply, quickly, and what you will get from me, I endeavor to be of, as high of a quality as I can make by myself with the time that is given to me to do so. And I'm going to quickly check my papers because I've made a bit of a preparation. Maybe I should use it. Great example there on, be a bit creative with the material that you make. Just a moment, still checking something out. Oh yeah, there will also be, there will be lists of questions that will be made available. I'm not entirely certain yet how I'm going to do that. Will I just add them on the end of the video with I give like, let's say, yeah, maybe just give a list of questions at the end, and then, whomever is studying the material or does something with the material can write the questions over on a paper, or get right into it. And yeah, I may also, it depends a little bit on, of course, how many people jump on it. I do not think I can make it. Yeah, maybe I should make a list also with possible answers, and then people can check out on what, if their answers lie close enough to be acceptable, to the somewhat more regular answer that I will provide. But how I'm going to do that, that's, that will require a bit of working out. We will see about that. One more moment, think I'm almost there. Ah, there we go, found it. Okay, there we go. Yeah, Clumsy Professor 101 here. So yes, I've written down, and I actually gave word to some of it already, but I'm going to read it again. It's 10 points on what I want these lessons to do for those who embrace them. First and foremost, as I mentioned, is to think for themselves. That's, I cannot add more to that, do I now? I can already lay that out. Of course, also to instill curiosity, I also gave word to that earlier. Basically, yeah, I will leave little tidbits and I'll sprinkle them around. It will be about a name here, an event there, and it's going to be just, hidden in plain sight, you might say. And for the people who really want to embrace these studies, they can engage with that. Oh yes, and what's also the reason why I want to keep it chronological, or make it as chronological as I can, is basically so the history becomes a bit more mapped out. From episode 1 until I don't know how many it's going to be, I believe that people then also will get a sense of, okay, so this is what's generally happening in the 8th century, and then it shifted over to how it all happened in the 9th, and then the 10th, etc., until the, so to say, end of the Viking period. So that also gives a general view on the evolution of everything, or maybe devolution if you so prefer. Again, that's also something that may be worth asking questions about in the end. But that is, of course, for I don't know, definitely more than just a few months from now. Again, I also gave word to this, is to develop the ability of people for ethics and also honor. What what is the behavior that your son and daughter find acceptable? What is the behavior that they're like, oh, awesome? What is the behavior that they're like, not entirely sure about that one? Because that's also really important in my opinion. Of course, I also want our young and our old, everyone that listens to this material, I want them to fall in love with our history, because it's one of the big questions, I would argue, of our people, isn't it? Where do we come from? Well, this is a small part of where we come from. So if we want to figure that out, and we do that by looking back, we do that by seeing how much we are still the same, then I do think that many of us will grow a certain fondness, or a deeper fondness of who we used to be a millennia ago, 2 millennia ago, whichever it's going to be. And I do hope that my contribution will inspire many younger people, or older people, it's really the same, to just sit back in a chair and just look up at the sky and just let their imagination run with them, thinking about these heroes and their voyages, or just the wonders that our people's hands could craft with the limited technology that they had, with the limited social backing that they had. Well, to some extent, or maybe with more social backing that they had than most people today, who knows. Of course, also, just to appreciate a good story, I'll do my I'll do what I can to make the material palatable, so to say, that people don't fall asleep while they're listening. In fact, if you're still with me right now, really appreciate it. The material itself will be a whole lot more interactive, or I will try to make it as such. If not physically, then at least psychologically interactive. Let's see. And yeah, to some extent also, just at the end of the day, decide where did our ancestors make mistakes, and where were they correct in their act, or where were they correct in their acting, but they could have done better in certain views. And with us today, how we are today, can we are we still making those mistakes, or are we doing the same right things, but is there space for improvement? Because these, again, the history lessons that I provide, I want them to leave an impact on the people alive today who interact with these studies, with these lessons, what have you, with the material. And I want it to serve them in their lives. As far as, this is perhaps a bit weird, sounding from someone who wants people to learn all of this. If the only thing that the young child who has grown up with these stories, the only thing that he or she leaves with, out of all of it, doesn't remember a single thing about the Vikings themselves, but is still informed on on what is right, on seeing patterns in society, on being able to act, and thus hopefully go for opportunities that will provide for a happier and better life, then I'm a happy man. I really mean that. And I would encourage every parent, every grandparent who wants their children to learn this, try to allow your children to develop in such a way. Don't make it read and repeat. That may work for some, that may work for math in a sense, that may work for other fields of study. In terms of how far as I look at it, with history, it's about who we are. and it's about how our history can serve us so we live better lives, and have us go into the future with far higher standards than we had ever imagined before. And in thanks to looking back, so we do not make the same mistakes, and we actually improve on where we were correct. Also very important is to understand through to all of this is that our ancestors are us and we are our ancestors. I think that's very important. These are not separate people from us. They are us, we are them. It may sound a bit confusing because, well, they are dead, we are alive. What kind of nonsense is this, Hans? And I would argue, well, but they share the same biospirit that we have. Their traits, whichever they might have been, are traits that we today all have inherited from those people. For better or worse, that I leave in the middle, that is for you to decide. But to understand that, at the end of the day, all those heroes back in the day, even villains, what have you, as you see them, what they were is what we still are today. Their empathy, their care, their holding on to culture or stepping away from culture, all of that is still capacities that we as a people today still have as an extended family. And that is a very important understanding too. We are looking, by looking at the past, we are looking at ourselves, how we were yesterday. And what do we do with that today? And what will we offer tomorrow? Those people of tomorrow. And the final point that I want to make is, this is for white well-being. And what is white well-being? Well, the well-being for all people everywhere, also for whites, also for Europeans across the globe. What that means is that I will provide this material as best as I may, meme pathogen free. Now, every one of us, it doesn't matter who you are, has been sickened with meme pathogens. That includes you, that includes me. So, all the material in this lifetime that you'll get from people, it will involve this or that meme pathogen. I will do my utmost to guard myself against it, but I will also ask that when you process the material that I provide, you do it with utmost care. And that is the best that I can do, that is the best that you can do. And then let's hope that our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren and what have you will always be that little bit more healthy, even if not a lot more healthier, for what we do today, trying to shed off the sickness of anti-whiteism that has been put into us. That's also part of the schooling project, right? Is to keep the meme pathogens at an absolute minimum, until hopefully we come to a point where we can say that there are none anymore. Just a moment, checking something out. I believe also that it is that hopefully through these lessons I can show young people that back in the day we matured at a far higher level. And this is a bit, you may call it judgmental, what have you. Maybe it's a bit loose from the topic of history, although I would argue against it, but what have you. Is that many people today, at this current time, who are physically adults, but in their minds they never grew up. And I think in a very large part public schooling has served that. because how do we grow up, or how is the older generations, how have we grown up, myself included, is that we were subject to go to a building with the people who just try to cram your head full of information, but at the end of the day it's just prepping you for um, prepping you for a life of servitude without leaving you any room for for any happiness or what have you, in my opinion. And all this pressure that was put on our older generations and many young still today, hopefully that will improve quickly soon at this year 2020, is that we were never given the room to just have fun. Well, that is to say, we were given vacations, but there always was that looming pressure of, oh, now I need to, for some it's just working with family, wasn't even really vacation. And then for others, it was, the vacation was such a relief that it became an addiction. And it led to many people, you know, growing into physical adults, but they held on to that escapism from the schooling system. Some they drank themselves stupid, did consumed worse substances. Their only joy in life is vacant entertainment, what have you, just to get away from the pressure. And it left them with nothing, no moral development, no ethical development, no sense of responsibility. And I do hope that with these lessons I change that as well for many young people, that they understand that the world is, there is a lot of beauty in the world, as much as there is also danger in the world. And to appreciate the beauty of it, we need to be prepared for the danger of it. The danger comes in many forms, and and the beauty is actually more present, as far as I can tell, for most of us, not for everyone. And that requires mature people. And it does not matter if the physical age is 11, is 12, 13. At that point in time, many of our ancestors were actually also mentally already adult. They understood that the world is a serious place where you can have a laugh, where you can have, where you can dance, where you can sing, where you can tell a joke, and then still, have that sense of, I also need to, be responsible. Because the laughters, the dancing, the jokes, the singing, it's all well and good, and it's what most people live for, and all the best to them for that. But to be aware that there are influences in the world that want to take away that laughter, want to take away that song, etc. The anti-whiteism basically. And I want our children to be of a mature age, so when they get confronted with that, they can respond as they should, with wariness, with care, and if needed, with the ability to defend themselves in whichever way is required, without feeling any guilt for that, and in fact feeling pride for that, for standing up for themselves and their own. All of that, I hope, I can provide in these lessons. I hope that all these characters will inspire them, whether they were seen by, the student as a villain or as a hero, that the student learns from that, learns from their mistakes, learns from their victories, learns from their tragedies, etc., etc., so that the student in question can have the best possible life that he or she may have. I think I've repeated myself enough for now. I hope I got the point across clear enough for everyone. And again, it's all of this, it's meant to be fun. I will try to make it fun. I will try to make it as entertaining as I can, because it's just so awesome. I really think at least that our history is awesome. It may not be for everyone, and for those who really have no interest in our history, I cannot really say I can empathize with that at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. I find it a bit strange. However, try to find something in the lessons then that appeals to you. Let's say you're a woodworker, but history doesn't really interest you. Well, maybe I will provide material that will involve architecture of the day, or creating furniture of the day, and then you guys can sink your teeth into that. If you don't like the history but you like woodworking, oh, look at that. Hans is showing me material now, how to make a bench. How they did it back in the day. The same kind, the correct wood, what kind of amount of nails you need, whatever. Or maybe just the tools that they had. What kind of axes did they have, what kind of saws, what kind of drills, what have you. All of that stuff. Maybe you don't like history, but you are very fond of fishing. Well, who knows? Maybe I can find something in regards to what kind of fishing boats that they had, what kind of nets, what kind of baubles they used to lure fish, what kind of harpoons that they had, who knows. These kind of things. Yeah, and with that said, I think I went through it all. I hope it didn't take too long for you guys. I really appreciate all of you going through the information with me. And yeah, let's have a go at it. I'm a busy man. I do work. I have family to look after, etc., etc. Personal things, as we all do. So this project, I cannot promise you that it will always be at a neat same time that I can out these videos, because it doesn't. I'm a guy by myself. I need to look into some characters. Some are more obscure, others there is a lot to find about them, what have you. And sometimes it may take me, I don't know, just 3 days to find enough to make a video. Other times it may take 2 weeks. I'll try to find the rhythm there, but we'll see how that goes. I think you all understand that it's all still in its inception. It's all still, early on, so it's bound to have a bumpy start. But with time, we will get better at it. With time, we can ease into it. And with time, well, we can make history ourselves. And with that said, I thank you all for your attention. I hope you're all as keen about this project as I am. And with that said, Hans Ugrin is going to sign off, and bye bye everyone. Have a good one.